Michael stood on the familiar doorstep, yet everything felt alien. The air, usually filled with the comforting sounds of his own home, now hummed with an unsettling silence, broken only by the distant hum of an approaching car. This was it, the routine custody handoff, a ritual he both cherished and loathed. Each time a piece of his heart went with his daughter Lily for a week, a void that echoed through his quiet apartment. Today, however, carried a heavier weight. Today wasn't just about saying goodbye to Lily. It was about saying hello to the ghost of his past, embodied in a man he'd never met. He had no idea that this seemingly routine exchange would lead to a conversation so devastating, yet ultimately paved the way for an unexpected alliance that would redefine what family truly meant. The knot in his stomach tightened, a precursor to the storm brewing just beneath the surface of this outwardly calm morning. He braced himself, knowing that some battles aren't fought with fists, but with words, and the silent strength to endure them. His gaze sharpened as the sleek vehicle glided to a stop, its presence an undeniable marker of change. The SUV, gleaming under the morning sun, was a model Michael vaguely recognized as far beyond his current means. It underscored the chasm that had grown between his life and Sarah's, a tangible representation of their diverging paths since the divorce, a quiet sting of inadequacy. Lily's small hand shot up, waving vigorously from the passenger window, her infectious smile momentarily dissolving Michael's apprehension. That was his girl, a beacon of pure, unadulterated happiness. Her vibrant jacket, a splash of color against the sleek, dark vehicle, seemed to capture her spirit perfectly. Sarah offered a polite, almost practiced smile from behind the wheel, a thin veil over years of unspoken history. He could feel the familiar tension in his shoulders, a protective reflex whenever he encountered his ex-wife in this formal, distant setting. It was always a delicate dance, balancing co-parenting cordiality with the ghosts of their shared past. A fragile truce he was always trying to maintain. He returned Lily's wave, a genuine warmth spreading through him at the sight of her, pushing down the uncomfortable feelings swelling within. Lily unbuckled her seatbelt, practically bouncing with anticipation, ready to embrace her dad. Oblivious to the undercurrents of adult emotions swirling around her, her blissful ignorance a fragile comfort. Her innocent excitement was a shield, for now, against the complexities he faced. Lily burst from the car, a joyful whirlwind, launching herself into Michael's awaiting arms. Her small, fierce hug was the only warmth he felt in that chilly morning, momentarily anchoring him. He buried his face in her hair, inhaling her familiar scent, a silent promise to protect this innocent joy. When he straightened, Sarah was already out of the car, her demeanor as controlled and unyielding as ever. Her gaze met his briefly, a flicker of something unreadable in her eyes, before she gestured subtly towards the passenger side. That's when John emerged. He was everything Michael wasn't, effortlessly composed, a confident smile playing on his lips, impeccably dressed in clothes that bespoke quiet affluence. John held a small, brightly wrapped gift bag, a seemingly thoughtful gesture that immediately set Michael's teeth on edge. The air crackled with unspoken comparisons, a silent contest playing out in Michael's mind. He felt a sudden, sharp pang of inadequacy, his worn jeans and faded jacket a stark contrast to John's polished appearance. This wasn't just a new man in Sarah's life. He was an undeniable presence, a living embodiment of the future Michael wasn't a part of. Michael tightened his grip on Lily, a silent assertion of his enduring claim, even as a polite, strained hello escaped his lips, barely audible above the rising tide of his internal turmoil. John's smile widened slightly. John extended a hand, his grip firm, his smile unwavering. Michael met it, his own handshake feeling limp, almost involuntary. The brief contact felt like a territorial marker, a silent acknowledgement of their new, uncomfortable dynamic. "Good to finally meet you, Michael," John said, his voice smooth, devoid of any genuine warmth or animosity, just a practiced cordiality that set Michael's nerves on edge. Michael mumbled a response, his eyes darting to Sarah, who stood a few feet away, observing them with a detached air. Then John turned his full attention to Lily, a softer, more genuine warmth entering his expression. He knelt down, offering the colourful gift bag. "This is for you, sweetie. Just a little something from your new home." Lily, initially shy, glanced at Michael for permission, then cautiously peered into the bag, her eyes widening at the sight of its contents. Likely a toy far more elaborate than anything Michael could currently afford. The gesture, though seemingly kind, felt like a deliberate encroachment, a claim being staked. Michael watched, a tightening in his chest. He was her father, her sole provider, and suddenly he felt utterly outmatched. Sarah's gaze flickered between the three of them, her expression unreadable, a silent referee in a match Michael hadn't even agreed to play. The cheerful sounds of birdsong felt utterly out of place. Michael knelt beside Lily, his hands busy adjusting the straps of her backpack, a small, familiar task that brought a measure of grounding. He took a moment, his fingers lingering on her shoulders, to exchange a silent glance with her. In her bright, trusting eyes, he saw his whole world reflected, a pure, unconditional love that fortified his resolve. This was his, this bond, unbreakable by sleek cars or expensive gifts. He whispered a quick joke, making her giggle, a sound that was music to his ears, a stark contrast to the polite, strained pleasantries exchanged earlier. For a fleeting moment, it was just the two of them, a bubble of warmth and connection amidst the chilly formality. John, having made his grand gesture, now stood a few paces back, his initial confident smile having settled into something more neutral, a slight shift in his posture betraying a hint of impatience. Sarah remained an impassive observer, her arms crossed, a silent clock counting down the seconds until the transfer was complete. Michael straightened up, a renewed sense of purpose firming his jaw. He was Lily's father, and that was a title no one could diminish, no matter how shiny their new life or how confident their smile. He squeezed Lily's hand one last time, a final, unspoken reassurance, before gently guiding her towards the SUV, preparing for the inevitable farewell. The weight in his chest returned, heavy and persistent, as the final moments of their time together ticked away. Lily was at the car door, her small frame silhouetted against the morning light. As she prepared to climb in, John knelt down, placing a seemingly tender hand on her shoulder. His smile was warm, almost too practiced, as he leaned in close. His voice, though lowered, carried clearly in the crisp air, reaching Michael's ears with a chilling precision. Every word was a surgical strike, aimed directly at the core of Michael's being. "Sweetie," John began, his gaze fixed on Lily's innocent face, "you're going to love having me around. Now you have a real man to look up to, someone who will always protect you." The words hung in the air, a poisoned dart. Michael's world, in that instant, fractured. The casual pronouncement, delivered with such an air of paternalistic assurance, was a brutal dismissal of his own fatherhood, a direct challenge to his identity. He felt a searing, icy shock course through his veins, quickly followed by a gut-wrenching pain. A low, guttural sound, almost imperceptible, escaped his throat, quickly swallowed by the rising tide of his anguish. Sarah, for her part, turned her head slightly, her gaze drifting towards the house, a subtle avoidance that spoke volumes. Lily, bless her heart, simply nodded, absorbing the words without fully comprehending their destructive power. But Michael understood. He understood perfectly. His daughter was being told, however subtly, that he was no longer enough, that he was somehow lacking. The sun, moments ago a comforting warmth, now felt like a spotlight on his sudden, profound inadequacy. The world around Michael blurred, receding into a dull, unfocused background, All that remained was the echo of John's words, a monstrous hum in his ears, and the piercing image of Lily's innocent nod. He felt an inferno ignite within him, a primal surge of fury, battling with an agonizing, profound hurt. His jaw clenched so tight he thought his teeth might shatter, a muscle ticking wildly in his temple. He wanted to lash out, to roar, to demand what right this man had to diminish his role, to plant seeds of doubt in his daughter's mind. But a stronger, more ingrained instinct took hold. The need to protect Lily from any ugliness, any conflict that might tarnish her bright spirit. A single traitorous tear pricked the corner of his eye, a testament to the depth of his pain, but he blinked it away, fiercely, refusing to allow any outward sign of his shattered composure. He had to be strong for her. The thought of creating a scene, of drawing Lily into an adult war, was unthinkable, yet the humiliation burned, a corrosive acid eating at his dignity. He felt stripped bare, his identity as a father challenged in the cruelest, most public way. His hands, still clutching Lily's backpack moments ago, now felt empty, useless. He swallowed hard, forcing down the lump of emotion that threatened to choke him, every fiber of his being screaming in silent protest against this injustice. He watched as John stood, his mission accomplished, a quiet satisfaction in his eyes, before helping Lily into the car. Lily, now buckled safely in the back seat, continued to wave, a tiny hand fluttering in the window, her smile undimmed. She blew Michael a kiss, her innocence a painful contrast to the raw emotion tearing through him. Michael tried to conjure a weak smile, to wave back convincingly, but his limbs felt heavy, unresponsive. Sarah met his gaze for a split second, a fleeting glance that held an emotion he couldn't quite decipher. Was it pity, regret, or perhaps a silent affirmation of John's words? He couldn't tell. Before he could process it, she shifted gears, and the sleek SUV began to pull away from the curb, a silent escape from the scene of his quiet devastation. John, now comfortably settled in the passenger seat, didn't bother to look back. His gaze remained fixed ahead, as if Michael and the entire awkward encounter had already been relegated to the past, an inconsequential detail. Michael stood frozen, rooted to the spot, his shoulders slumping under an invisible weight. The car receded down the street, its tail lights a diminishing red glow, taking with it not just his daughter, but a piece of his self-worth. The silence that descended was thick, suffocating, amplifying the echo of John's damning words. He was left alone on the immaculate lawn, a lone figure in a picture-perfect setting that now felt profoundly hostile. The crisp morning air suddenly felt cold, biting, matching the chill that had settled deep within his bones. His world had not just cracked, it had splintered into 1,000 jagged pieces. Hours later, the sting hadn't faded. If anything, it had festered into a dull, throbbing ache. Michael sat in the familiar comfort of his old armchair, the worn fabric doing little to soothe the raw edges of his soul. His apartment, usually a sanctuary, now felt like a prison of his own thoughts. The half-eaten bowl of cold cereal on the coffee table was a testament to his lack of appetite, his stomach churning with a toxic cocktail of anger, humiliation, and a crushing sense of powerlessness. He stared blankly at a framed photo of Lily on the wall, her joyful face mocking his despair. He could almost hear John's words echoing in the quiet space, each syllable a fresh wound. A real man to look up to. Had Lily understood? Would she now see him as somehow less, somehow insufficient? The thought was a dagger to his heart. He ran a hand through his hair, rough and unkempt, a stark contrast to John's polished appearance. He felt utterly depleted, drained of energy, every ounce of motivation sapped by the encounter. The afternoon light outside, once bright, now bled into a muted, melancholic grey, mirroring the landscape of his mood. The apartment, usually a haven filled with Lily's laughter and his own quiet routines, felt vast and hollow, the silence pressing in on him. He considered calling Sarah, confronting John, but the futility of it washed over him, a cold wave of resignation. What good would it do? It would only escalate into a messy argument, inevitably hurting Lily. He just wanted to scream, to lash out at the unfairness of it all, but he remained silent, trapped in the cage of his own anguish. As night descended, painting the city in shades of inky black, Michael's internal battle raged. He paced his small living room, the worn rug doing nothing to absorb the frantic energy coursing through him. His phone lay on the coffee table, a silent temptress, offering the illusion of control, the promise of resolution. He picked it up, his thumb hovering over Sarah's contact, then instinctively over John's. What cutting words could he summon to express the depth of the wound inflicted? But the words felt shallow, inadequate, incapable of conveying the raw, visceral pain. He began to type, a furious flurry of text, only to pause, his mind replaying Lily's innocent face. No, this wasn't about him, it was about her. Dragging her into an adult war, especially one fueled by his wounded pride, would only cause her more confusion and pain. He deleted the message, the fleeting aggression dissolving into a bitter taste. He thought about the kind of father he wanted to be, strong, protective, a steady anchor. That father wouldn't resort to petty squabbles. That father would find another way. But what way? He dropped the phone onto the couch with a sigh, heavy with defeat. The screen's glow illuminated the profound anguish etched onto his face. He felt utterly cornered, trapped between righteous anger and unconditional love for Lily. The silence pressed down, amplifying his helplessness. He closed his eyes, wishing for a moment of peace from the turmoil. The decision to remain silent, though agonizing, felt like the only choice for Lily, a silent sacrifice of his own pride on the altar of her well-being. But the internal cost was immense. The first faint streaks of dawn bled across the sky, painting the urban landscape in soft, hopeful hues of pink and gold. Michael, however, remained untouched by its promise. He sat by the window, a solitary figure silhouetted against the burgeoning light, his face still etched with the weariness of a sleepless night and the raw pain of a wounded heart. He held an old, faded photograph in his hand, a tangible relic of a simpler time. It was a picture of him and a much younger Lily, their smiles wide, unburdened by the complexities of adult life. In that image, he saw himself as he used to be, a hero, a giant, the undisputed center of her universe. Now that image felt like a cruel taunt, a reminder of what he feared he was losing. He traced Lily's smiling face with his thumb, a silent, desperate vow forming in his mind. He would not let John's words, or anyone's words, diminish his daughter's love for him, or his role in her life. He might be broken, but he wasn't defeated. He wouldn't engage in a shouting match, but he would fight for his place, for Lily's understanding, with every ounce of his being. The exact method remained elusive, a swirling fog in his mind, but the resolve was ironclad. He closed his eyes, inhaling deeply, trying to draw strength from the new day, from the quiet strength of his love for Lily. The photograph, a silent witness to their shared past, became a talisman of his unwavering commitment to their future. The dawn, despite his internal darkness, pressed on, a relentless march towards whatever the new day would bring. Late morning found Michael attempting to immerse himself in work, a desperate bid to escape the incessant replay of John's words in his mind. His laptop screen glowed with spreadsheets, but his gaze remained distant, unfocused, his fingers hovering uselessly over the keyboard. Each number, each formula, seemed trivial against the backdrop of his emotional turmoil. He picked up his coffee mug, cold and forgotten, and took a sip, grimacing at the bitter taste. He was restless, unable to settle, haunted by the spectre of what he'd heard and what it might mean for Lily. Just as he was about to give up and stare out the window again, his phone, lying face down on the desk, vibrated with a sharp, insistent ping, a text message. He frowned, recognizing the number as unfamiliar. His heart hammered against his ribs, a sudden, irrational fear seizing him. Was it Sarah calling to escalate? Or worse, a message about Lily? With a deep breath, he unlocked the screen. His eyes widened slightly in surprise, then in a flicker of confusion, as he saw the sender's name. John. The new husband. A shiver ran down his spine. Why would John be texting him? The very thought sent a fresh wave of anxiety through him. He hesitated for a long moment, battling the urge to ignore it, to simply delete it and pretend it never happened. But curiosity and a faint, desperate hope compelled him. He tapped the message open, his gaze fixated on the glowing screen, bracing himself for whatever new blow might await him. The message was short, direct, and completely unexpected, sending a jolt through his already frayed nerves. The text message was simple. Can we talk? Just us. Coffee? Michael had wrestled with the invitation for a full hour, John's words still a bitter taste in his mouth. Yet the unexpected directness, the implied desire for a personal conversation, chipped away at his defenses. He responded with a terse, "Fine. Where?" Now he sat across from John in a quiet coffee shop, the air thick with unspoken tension. Michael's posture was rigid, his hands clasped tightly, a shield against vulnerability. John, however, seemed different. Gone was the effortless confidence, replaced by a slight nervousness, a furrow in his brow. He seemed genuinely hesitant. "Michael," John began, his voice softer, almost apologetic, "I wanted to talk about yesterday, specifically what I said to Lily." Michael's guard immediately shot up. "You mean when you told my daughter she finally had a real man to look up to?" he interjected, his voice laced with raw anger. John flinched, then nodded slowly. "I know what it sounded like, and I am truly sorry. It came out all wrong. I was trying to tell her I'd protect her too, as part of her new home. But I never meant to imply you weren't enough, or your role isn't paramount. You're her father, a bond I could never replace. I wanted her to feel secure, and I was clumsy. I respect your place in her life, truly. I handled it badly, and I regret it deeply." The sincerity in his tone, though unexpected, was palpable, opening a fragile crack in Michael's fortress of anger. Michael listened, truly listened, for the first time since yesterday. The rigid knot in his shoulders began to loosen, his tightly clasped hands slowly separating. He took a deep, shuddering breath, the raw anger and humiliation visibly draining from him, replaced by a thoughtful, almost weary expression. John watched him, a palpable sense of relief washing over his features as Michael's defenses softened. The steam from their forgotten coffee mugs swirled between them, a gentle, warming barrier now. I appreciate you saying that, John," Michael finally managed, his voice still hoarse, but devoid of its earlier aggression. It really cut deep. You have no idea." John nodded, his gaze earnest. "I can only imagine. And for that, I am truly sorry. My intention was to reassure Lily, to make her feel loved and secure in a new situation, but I chose my words poorly, and I see now how devastating they must have sounded to you. There's no excusing it, but I hope you can understand the intent." He paused, leaning forward slightly. "We both care about Lily, Michael. That's the most important thing. And if we can't communicate, she'll be the one who suffers. I want to do right by her, and that includes respecting her father. I truly do." The honesty in John's eyes was undeniable, a stark contrast to the polished veneer Michael had first encountered. A fragile understanding, tentative but real, began to form, a quiet truce for Lily's well-being. The bitterness in Michael's heart began to yield, replaced by an unexpected sense of shared purpose. They emerged from the coffee shop, the afternoon sun now casting long, warm shadows across the street. The heavy weight that had burdened Michael's shoulders for days had finally begun to lift, replaced by a surprising lightness, a sense of cautious hope. John walked beside him, no longer a formidable rival, but a complex human being, flawed yet earnest, bound by the same profound love for Lily. They didn't shake hands again, nor did they make grand declarations. Instead, a quiet, almost imperceptible nod passed between them, a silent acknowledgement of the fragile bridge they had just built. It was a bridge constructed not of perfect words, but of shared vulnerability and a mutual desire for their daughter's happiness. Michael realized that sometimes the most painful cracks in life's foundation don't just break you. They open you up to unexpected connections, to alliances you never thought possible. His world had indeed cracked, but not in destruction. It had cracked open to reveal a wider, more complex landscape of family, one where even the most unlikely people could find common ground for the sake of love. This story, like so many others, reminds us that compassion, communication, and the willingness to see beyond our own pain can transform even the hardest moments into opportunities for profound connection. If this story resonated with you, if you've ever found unexpected understanding in life's challenging turns, please take a moment to like this video, share your thoughts in the comments below, and subscribe to our channel for more emotionally resonant stories that explore the depth of the human experience. Your support helps us continue sharing these powerful narratives. Thank you.